You're listening to the JJS podcast. Up to this point, the most successful companies around the world have had entire departments made up of full-time employees dedicated to providing marketing communication support, leaving every other company without those resources at a distinct disadvantage. Well, the world has changed, and we have to change with it. That's why I'm going to take my 15 years of experience of managing marketing communication strategies for some of the biggest brands in the world and share that knowledge with you so that it can improve your business and your life. So if you're a business professional or an entrepreneur who wants to learn how to deploy the right strategies given your position and the position of the audience you're trying to reach, you're in the right place. Hey guys, welcome to the JJS podcast. So today we're going to be talking about, it's not going to be the happiest episode, but obviously we're going to have to talk about the mass layoffs that are occurring. This is, difficult to watch and to see unfold. As someone who's been in that position a couple of times, it's for the modern world, for the modern worker, it's one of the most unsettling, distressing things you can kind of go through. And so I just wanted to jump on here and give my insight and hopefully provide some helpful tips for folks going through this right now. And I know that even that won't be, it won't help anyone really feel that much better, because I know that when I was going through that stuff, when I have gone through that stuff, really nothing makes you feel better other than finding some new job or some new source of income. So I recognize all that and I understand that, and but I did want to just offer what I could in support, and also kind of analyze things from the broader perspective of what this show's about, and kind of stuff that I've been talking about in the last couple of years on this podcast, which I got to say was not the original intent. The original intent of this podcast was to speak strictly about marketing communication stuff and directed primarily at folks who were either entering the field of marketing communications or folks who had to assume those responsibilities in the wake of the pandemic. That was kind of the original intent. And I still try to make an effort to infuse as much of my learnings over the course of my career in that field through various episodes. But this is kind of taken on a life of its own and evolved into something a little greater than that. Not only because of my particular interests or any of that, but also just how history has been unfolding, and some of the feedback that I've gotten from folks who are listening to the show and wanted to get my take on different things happening. Being as someone who has been in corporate America for so long, and a lot of disruption has been happening in that sphere specifically. So that's kind of what this has turned into. Which I don't know about you guys listening or watching, but I've kind of appreciated. But in regards to these layoffs and everything, as difficult as it is, layoffs are not new, right? Especially in mass layoffs, they are not new. That's not a new phenomenon. That this happens throughout the business world quite a bit, and it happens kind of almost in a cyclical kind of fashion when there's any kind of economic uncertainty or disruptions happening. We saw it happen as soon as the pandemic really got to become a huge deal. There were also mass layoffs and all those things. So they are not in and of themselves anything new, right? What is notable from this period, is that it seems to be happening in a sector that a lot of folks, a lot of observers have felt for a very long time, is kind of on an upward trajectory as a whole, right? The tech sector, people have felt, of any of the industries that we have today, the industry, the sector that's probably going to expand dramatically in the coming years, the tech sector, right? So everyone kind of had that same sentiment that was kind of the future. It was going to take up more and more share of the labor market. So what's really kind of, I guess, caught people on their heels, including the folks who work in that sector, is this concentration of layoffs in that area specifically. According to Crunchbase and Layoffs.fyi, which is a crowdsourced database of tech layoffs, there have been, at the time of this recording, 46,000 tech layoffs. So that's 46,000 folks who have been let go. And that's 46,000 lives that have been impacted and upended by this. So, it's shocking, it's jarring, and it's kind of gut wrenching to see, because clearly anyone can look at that and say, I think in the back of the mind, in back of a lot of folks' minds, whenever there's layoffs, even though they don't want to admit it, some people tend to feel like, well, that's unfortunate, but if you're really a high performer, and you're really kind of killing it all the time, you don't have to worry about that stuff. You don't have to worry about getting laid off. It's really the people who have been, kind of mailing it in or doing the bare minimum and that. When you see a number like 46,000, it's very difficult to believe that 46,000 people in the most competitive industry and sector we're the layabouts, and we're like the people who weren't giving 100%. It's kind of difficult to believe that. You have to understand, if you're a reasonable person, that a large portion of those folks were the ones killing it, were the ones that were delivering 110% and making a real impact, and yet they were still let go for reasons that had nothing to do with their performance, which people don't want to think about, because it's a little scary, right? You kind of get a little, you kind of protected yourself in that little bubble of thinking like, well, it won't happen to me as long as I'm delivering 100%. That illusion has been completely dispelled for you, because even those in one of the most cutting edge, aggressive, competitive sectors were not safe, including those who were high performers. So, you have to kind of step back and really look at the situation holistically. And, I think there's a few things that we should probably take away from this. For one, and, I not to reiterate or kind of throw salt in the wound or anything like that, but, kind of the stuff I've been talking about here about adjusting to this new world of work and kind of taking this remote first kind of approach, in large part is influenced by my own experience, where I was somewhere at an organization, and I felt like, and I was, reassured of this by my superiors at the time, that I felt like I was really kind of delivering 110%. I mean, financially, the financial impact of my activities were significant, and I won't go into them, but they were significant by any measure. So when the pandemic happened, and I, along with a large percentage of that organization's workforce, our positions were eliminated, that was kind of destabilizing, shocking to me. And so I spent the next few months kind of thinking about, what could I have done better, not just necessarily on the job or with that job, but for me as an individual, where did I kind of go wrong? And the conclusion I came to was, the days of having a job where you just had all your eggs kind of in that basket, in any sense, even if you don't agree or concur with my prescription for the future of the world of work or any of that, you have to understand that, and there's books that have been written on this and more coming, where this kind of model where folks have one job. They go to college, they get a degree in a field or a field related, and they get a job somewhere. They intern somewhere and they get a job, and they kind of have all of their financial eggs in that basket in terms of income. And then if something happens to that job, like their lives are completely in a disarray. That model is not working anymore in this world. And I think a lot of folks who are in a position to do so are kind of wanting to preserve that model for various reasons that benefit them, but do not benefit the broader workforce, the average individual, especially the average professional or knowledge worker. And I was talking about this, and I said this on a podcast before, but I was talking about this with a friend recently. Folks in my generation, we've seen a lot of disruptive events. I was in high school when 9/11 happened. I was literally in American history class when 9/11 happened, and saw it on TV, and that was a very disruptive, destabilizing event, right? And then we saw the economic crisis happen, and the housing market crashed, which no one at that time before then ever thought was ever going to happen. And there was a lot of things a lot of factors that led up to that, but that was not something that anyone thought was ever going to happen, and that created a huge crisis globally. And that was a really destabilizing event. So it's okay. So you go through two global destabilizing events pretty early in life, and typically you've heard of generations where they had 1 to 2 major global destabilizing events. Okay, this was kind of your turn. And then the pandemic happened, which was another global destabilizing, disorienting event for everyone. And, so you begin to think, are things kind of going in a direction where maybe these things are happening or because, these things are happening, what's really going on is that these are responses to a rapidly changing environment full of different factors that one human being cannot possibly calculate or understand or predict. And what's really going on is that we're shedding kind of the old ways. We're shedding kind of things that were working for a really long time, but aren't working anymore. And I think one of those things that's not working anymore is that model. Is you had one job, and you just climb the corporate ladder, and you put up with everything you have to possibly put up with, just because you have to have your salary and your income to support yourself and your family. And if anything happens to that job, man, like everything gets sent into the disarray. I don't think that model works anymore, where disruption and destabilization is now the norm. It's not. This isn't something where it's like, wow, it's crazy that happened. No, it's really not crazy that it happened anymore, because we're living through a tumultuous season as a society, and it's really not crazy that X, Y, and Z happened anymore, because unfortunately, disruption and destabilization and things like that are now the norm. They're not abnormal anymore. And so I think, partially, why these layoffs happen, right? So there's a couple of theories of why this is happening. One, obviously the supply chain problems, obviously the chilling effect on the economy that the rate hikes have, those kind of things. Also, there's some conjecture or some analysis that implies that there's kind of this broader divestment from the tech companies in this kind of digitally focused, remote first kind of world that they thought was coming as a result of the pandemic, which I think is a mistake to divest from that. I think that is where we're going. I think we're going through a period where there's kind of this kind of recalibration going on, and powerful people or executive type folks are trying to pull back, and people are just responding to that, reacting to that, and just kind of folding a little bit. And so, it seems like they're just going to make everyone go back to work and go back to that model and everything like that. I get why it appears that way, but there's some people who feel like that's what's happening too. The tech companies kind of divesting from that bet, so to speak. And, but also, there's also this kind of clustering effect that happens. And this has happened before with companies when one company in a sector, one major company, begins to do layoffs and they see a boost in the stock market. Well, the other companies kind of replicate that. And the other executives kind of mimic that, even if, structurally or operationally or systemically, they really don't need to do that. They still do it because they know they're going to get a boost from the stock market, because they know that the investors are going to say, well, this company that's very similar to yours did this. Why don't you do that? Why aren't you doing that too? And so they begin to see this effect in terms of investment. So there's some of that going on. And, those are people's lives, right? And I get it. Like a company, an executive thinks to themselves, or management teams thinks, well, our duty is to the shareholders, not to the employees, ultimately. I get all that. But those are still people's lives. And again, it reflects, in my opinion, a kind of short-sightedness. Like the show? Well, then make sure to check out every previous episode and tune in for new ones as we discuss marketing, business, and the new world of work anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe after this episode, and thanks for listening. If you think about it, because these are the same folks who thought that originally. I mean, let's say that they were wrong. Let's say that this isn't, that tech-centric, tech-focused future isn't coming, and these companies thought that's why they hired to this level and all that. Well, these are the same folks that thought that, right? And so they were short-sighted before, they were wrong before to that level, to where it's impacting close to 50,000 people's lives and probably more coming. But they're not short-sighted now. Now they got it right. Now they know what they're doing. It's kind of nonsensical if you think about it. So, and again, I think it speaks to this breakdown in communication, because these executive types, the executive layer of these corporations are not truly understanding the scenario from the worker perspective. And if they did, they'd probably have better informed decisions. And because the employee population isn't going to tell you candidly everything that, you should know from their perspective, for obvious reasons. So because that communication is not happening, because that exchange of information, understanding is not happening at a very, detailed, granular kind of level, you're getting these kind of decisions. You're getting them, well, we'll just hire a bunch of people, in the back of their mind, knowing that, well, if things get hot or whatever, we'll just kind of cut back and all this. And, and then doing that when things do get a little bumpy or whatnot. So I think if there was a greater understanding of what actually is occurring and how that impacts folks in different sectors or different areas and levels of the economy based on their particular skill set or income level or any of that, if there's a better understanding of that, I don't think these things would be happening at the level that they're happening. So, it's difficult to watch because, had they understood everything that's kind of happening from a broader perspective, from this kind of global, holistic perspective that I've been talking about, maybe they wouldn't have hired so many folks, or maybe they wouldn't be laying off so many folks. There's other areas to cut, right? You don't necessarily have to, cut 12,000 jobs at your company. You might you could probably find other ways to reduce costs and minimize that impact a little more. I'm sure they would argue, well, we did that. We looked at everything, and this was the lowest amount we could possibly let go. I find that hard to believe. Were these executive compensation packages seriously looked at? Were your expenditures or investments in other things really looked at? Did you consider maybe not renewing your commercial lease, which is a substantial sum of money over the course of 5 or 10 years, and just let everyone kind of, and really truly kind of go all in on the remote model? If you didn't do any of those things, because again, it's kind of this circular reasoning going on, it's really difficult to kind of swallow, well, we had to let go of this many people. We had to let go of tens of thousands of folks, and all this. So, for folks who have been impacted by this, or who fear they'll be impacted by this, my message is kind of the same. Really start to think about and reorient how you do things. Maybe I know the impulse is I just got to find another job. I'm just going to find another job, and I just got to get another job and go back to the same old thing, and I'll go back to, and I'll work on site if they want me to again, and all this. Like, I know the impulse is to do that because I know how it is, right? You can't go any significant amount of time without a comparable level of income that you were having before. Because, then and it's not necessarily, people hear that and they think like, well, that's just, that's greed talking, or that's, you're spoiled or entitled or any of that stuff. It's not necessarily that, because I don't think most people care too much if they have to scale back their lifestyle or the way they're doing things and sacrifice and suffer a little bit. I don't think most people mind that. What really is painful and difficult is to subject people you care about, like your family, and to subject them to that because of your situation. That's what's hard for a lot of folks. It's not necessarily, most people I don't think care if they live in a studio apartment and just eat Chef Boyardee for 3 years straight and that's it. I think most people would do that if they had to, right? If it was only them being impacted. You don't want to do that to your family, though, to people you care about, because they didn't do anything wrong. Their only crime is being related to you, right? And so you start feeling this guilt and this weight, and so you start thinking, I just need another job, and I just need to work again, and whatnot. I get all that, and I've done that. I've tried to like completely not divorce myself from having to do that and whatever, and then gone back because time right now. I'm in no means in any position to, I'm not a life coach, right? I'm not one of these people. It's like, rah, you got to go and just, who cares? And that's, God speak to those people, but that's not me. I'm more of a pragmatic person. So I get all that. But having said that, I would take the opportunity, if you can, if you're in a position to really kind of take the time, this in-between time you have, because you won't be able to do it later once you are committed somewhere else or any of that, to really kind of restructure and reorient at the systemic level how you're doing things, right? And specifically what I mean is try to find a way not to completely depend on one source of income, one thing, okay, if you can. I posted it on LinkedIn recently, some of the ideas I had, and one of them, was if you are in marketing communications, I would highly recommend you look into marketer hire. Okay, it's one word, marketer hire. and the link will be in the show notes for you to look at. It'll be an affiliate link because when you join, they give you an affiliate link that you can share with others. And they give you a small like little incentive to get others to join and whatnot. So that'll be the link. That's the link I have. So I'll put that in show notes. But check that out if you are in marketing or communications or digital marketing or even marketing if you're in automation technology or marketing automation or anything like that. They have roles. They do all the heavy lifting in terms of finding leads and in terms of the sales process and closing the sale. All you have to do is what the way it works is they will match you with a client, and so they'll send you, a lead for a client for an opportunity to do some gig work with them. But they've only sent it to you. They didn't send it to 50 people and see which one responds first, which is great, because sometimes you have some of these type of little agencies that do that. They don't do that. If they send it to you, they send it to only you, and you have 24 hours to respond to see if you want to take the gig or not. And so, and the more you get, the more you get. So if you get one and that goes well, then they're more likely to send you others, and so on and so forth. It's kind of a snowball effect. So that has helped tremendously through those tough periods, through those times that things slow down, or I got let go from something because of the financial headwinds. That's their favorite thing, the financial headwinds. That has held me over and helped me tremendously. So if you are in marketing communications, I highly recommend joining Marketer Hire. It's a great kind of system they have worked out, especially for people who just want to do the work. Like, you don't want to have to look around for clients and look around for leads, and because that is a painstaking process, and it's very time consuming, and it's typically the reason why a lot of people kind of get out of self-employment and running their own agencies. 9 times out of 10, it's because that process is too intensive. They can do it because they're marketers, but they're devoting a large portion of their time and their effort and their energy to doing that, and then they have to do the actual work for the clients, and it becomes difficult to manage. So a lot of people just bow out for that reason. This takes care of that problem. So highly recommend that. Also, if you're not a marketer or if you are, but that's not something you want to do, definitely create profiles with staffing agencies, Randstad, Solomon Page, Robert Half, those kind of outfits. Create a profile. They're great at just finding you roles that fit with. They're very good at finding you things that are a good fit for you. So, create profiles with that. Even if you still have a job right now and you're kind of concerned that, and you're kind of looking around the corner, definitely look into those things. They can be extremely helpful, and they've also come through at the perfect time, for me in the past. So definitely do those things. Make sure that your CV, your resume, is not just up to date, but that you have different versions going out. Okay, don't do this thing because I've done that, where I had one version, I thought it rocked, I thought it was awesome, and I'm sending it out, and I'm not getting one bite. And a month or 3 months go, I'm like, what's going on? And then I change something about it. It could be something small, it could be something big, and then that one starts getting bites. And it's like, man, if I had known that 2 months ago, that would have been really helpful. So have multiple versions going out. It's what we do in marketing, right? Everything in marketing is testing. So you A/B test your CV, your resumes, and send different ones out and see which ones you're getting a little more reaction to, and then just gravitate towards using that one, so you see what's working. And if you're doing 2 and still not working, try a third one and try a fourth one until you start getting hits. And have, obviously, people always say, have folks look at it, take a look. It's always good to have fresh eyes looking at it, because you might have something wrong with it that you didn't catch, and all that. Even this is what I do for a living. I still make mistakes. I recently, it's a fun. It wasn't funny at the time. I was really kind of upset about it, but I sent out a thing with my samples for this opportunity, and the woman found errors in my writing samples, which I looked at them. I'm like, okay, I may have missed a hyphen or 2 here or there, but to her they were a huge deal, because it was this field, and so that really drove me crazy. I don't she's not I don't think she's watching, but I hounded her, and I was like, can you tell me like what exactly was wrong and all that, and even in her response, she had an error, which I pointed out, and I don't think that was the most mature thing to do, but I did that, and so we all make, the point is we all make mistakes, even people who do this for a living. You make little errors, even if they're small ones, people still take them seriously. So always have someone else look at them, and just make sure everything's kind of buttoned up. And again, it's a difficult time to go through when this happens, and I get it, but I really think the long-term solution is to kind of protect yourself by distributing the risk a little bit, and maybe finding a good side hustle that still produces some consistent income even when you're not working, or finding some kind of other income source or revenue source that's nothing to do with working. Maybe it's a YouTube channel or something, but just try to restructure how you're operating at a fundamental level. Take this opportunity to do it now, because you likely won't have the energy or the time to do it later, once you're right back in it and you're working again and it's the same old thing. Really kind of try to change things now, and and to a larger, to a broader level. We have to really, as a society and as a working world, we really have to kind of think about what we want to do in the future. I read an article USA Today recently, and it said 35% of the HR executives surveyed said they'll be guided mostly or exclusively by big data as they cut labor costs. So algorithms and platforms are using to identify who to lay off. And the idea behind that is to remove bias and those kind of things from the process. And 20% said their decision will be driven mostly or solely by gut instinct, meaning a person will make choices with little or no assistance from a computer. And nearly half are taking a middle ground approach. 46% say they'll rely equally on data and gut instinct. So, as somebody who's worked in corporate America, I don't really trust either of those things, to be honest with you. I don't trust some algorithm, especially when it comes to marketing and communication, because one of the biggest, downsides to working in that field is the financially minded people, the executives or whoever, always want to see a one-to-one relationship in terms of output, in terms of impact that you had. If you rebranded the company or something, let's say you did a whole new branding, or you did a PR campaign, those things, it's almost impossible to produce any kind of, we desperately try, don't get me wrong, we really try hard, and we've devised creative ways to do that, to try to figure out how to make that happen. But it's really difficult to produce a one-to-one data set that shows we did this and it generated, it resulted in this ROI. There's some things you can do that with, specifically in digital marketing, where you can see who converted. But in a lot of these other kind of more abstract, creative type of activities, it's really difficult to do that. So how would an algorithm, if people can't even do that, if you really don't know how many people started going to your store because of the new brand, you can speculate, you can kind of estimate. You can say your foot traffic was at this, and then we rebranded and now it was this. You still can't scientifically, definitively say it's because of the new branding, right? You just can't do that. It probably is. It might be, but it's not scientific, and you can't really do that. So how is an algorithm going to do that? If you're in the marketing communication field, if you're communications and you deal specifically with internal initiatives, how do you calculate that impact? Just how many people read your articles? I mean, the internet articles and all that. I mean, there's only so much control you have over that. So, I don't trust that. And then I also don't trust people's your gut instinct. Like, I just have a feeling these are the right 5,000 people to lay off. What? Like, especially when you have situations that I've described before too, where it's like you might be working for a supervisor or a manager that is threatened by you because you are better than. I worked at a huge company. I won't say the name, but I worked at a huge company, logistics company, many years ago. And that was the situation. They hired this person over me, who I was just surpassing in every conceivable measure, and that person had the power to get rid of me. And so, that happens too. So your gut instincts, like, spare me, please. It should be a much more thoughtful process than that, but it's not going to be if they're laying off folks, not because they necessarily have to, or because it's actually going to improve the actual financial operation, but just going to improve the stock number, and you're just upending people's lives because of that. If that's the kind of environment, that it's unfortunate, and so it's not really being carried out in a very thoughtful way. So, I just this is kind of one of the big reasons why I think we do need a shift in the world of work. We can't. You have to understand, even if you're an employer or an executive, and your attitude is like, well, I don't owe anyone a job. I don't live to just give people jobs. The whole purpose is to profit and make money and all that. I get all that, right? But you then have to understand that the worker, the professional, knowledge worker, whatnot, they're not really. It doesn't make sense for them to continue in this way. It just doesn't. This is, you completely have them by the what, and if you decide arbitrarily or on a whim, or because you want to hit from the stock market, to just fire them or let them go and destroy their livelihood, and especially in a time where we're expecting a recession to happen, where it's going to be even more difficult to find work. You have to understand that doesn't work anymore. That relationship does not work for them in the long run, in the long term. They have to figure something else out for their own self-interest. Their own, for the sake of their own family. They have to distribute their risk a little bit. They have to figure out some other kind of way to have a sustainable, kind of predictable flow of income, so that their lives are not completely upended. I understand this has been normalized, the last few decades. Like, that's just the way it is. You get a job and nothing's guaranteed, and you could just lose it tomorrow for really no good reason because it's at will, and that's it. You just got to deal with it and whatnot. Well, I think we need a bigger conversation to rethink all of that, because, as I said before, it would behoove the employers and the executives themselves to rethink that, because what do you think is going to happen when economic conditions shift and the leverage is back on the workers again, like it was in 2021, which is going to happen because, again, this is all very cyclical. What do you think is going to happen then? Where do you think you're going to be? You're going to be back desperately looking for workers again. They're going to want to work remote because now they can demand it again, because now you need them because the demand has shifted. And we're going to go through this whole thing again, this whole rigmarole and whatnot. Why not just adjust things, the larger tapestry of things, okay, to where they're more sustainable, and it's kind of like a large net. Instead of a flimsy piece of cardboard, we should turn things into a big net so it can withstand disruption, and it can withstand shifts, and it can withstand destabilizing events, which are going to continue to happen. That's just the way it is now. We're going through this period of globalization, and that is going to have some growing pains and some aftershocks. So let's just prepare for that on both ends, from the employer perspective and the manager perspective and the worker perspective. Let's just create a broader net, and where, basically you want to be in a situation where the worker isn't completely, thrown off and their whole lives are destroyed if they lose a job. So if they lose a job, it's like, okay, well, I have this other source of income coming in, so it's not that big of a deal. It's not life or death, and I'll just find this other supplemental piece. And then from the manager perspective, they don't have to worry so much about the guilt associated with laying off tens of thousands of workers and then giving these kind of anemic, flaccid apologies, and and they have to worry about that, and then have to worry about when things shift back in the workers' favor, how they have to navigate through that, and let's just permanently set up a new kind of structure in terms of the world of work, where it's resilient and it's sustainable, and it's not, we're not completely upending people's lives and disrupting things more than they need to be when disruptive things happen. That's just basically my assessment and my kind of takeaway from all this and larger prescription. That the whole thing has to kind of be rethought, because it's just not working anymore, and it's just causing more pain and more suffering than it needs to. So, just take that for what you will. I'm happy to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. I hope, and again, if you're experiencing any of this, I'm truly sorry, and I hope that something changes for you quickly, and it's not too long of a period of kind of wondering and uncertainty and anxiety, because I know what that's like, and it's terrible. So, just as always, good luck out there. Thank you for checking out this episode of the JJS Podcast. If you're watching us via YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the show. And if you're listening in through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or something like that, be sure to rate us there as well. Hope you enjoyed listening, and remember, communication without strategy is just noise. Till next time.